Price is holding above the 120 moving average while rotating between overlapping session anchors. On the 1-hour chart, the February 24th Asia session spent extended duration testing the February 23rd New York anchor. That interaction unfolded directly around the rising 120 MA. Multiple hourly candles probed the same zone without producing sharp rejection. The session ultimately closed above both references. This sequence defines structural engagement. When price revisits a rising 120 MA and remains above it after several rotations, interaction shifts from test to acceptance. Acceptance is not defined by a single impulse candle. It is defined by duration above structural weight. During that Asia session, volatility remained controlled rather than explosive. The 20 MA stayed beneath price and maintained upward slope. Slope separation between 20 MA and 120 MA was modest, but constructive. Bollinger width narrowed slightly as candles rotated near the same band region. Compression dominated for several consecutive hours. That compression above a rising 120 MA matters. It reflects holding behavior rather than rejection behavior. Flat bodies formed repeatedly near the same vertical band. Upper and lower wicks shortened as rotation stabilized. The February 25th New York session then formed its anchor clearly above the 120 MA. That anchor positioned itself between the February 22nd Asia session reference below and the February 5th New York boundary above. This created a layered containment structure on the hourly time frame. Lower reference beneath, upper reference above. Moving average supporting underneath. Volatility expanded during the early New York impulse. Candle bodies lengthened noticeably. The February 22nd Asia anchor was exceeded with visible momentum. Price accelerated toward the February 5th New York session range. Extension slowed inside that prior New York memory. The 20 MA crossed above the 120 MA during this expansion phase. Shorter cycle slope accelerated more visibly than the longer average. The 120 MA continued rising at a steadier, more gradual gradient. Separation became visible, but not extreme. Distance between averages increased, yet candles did not detach aggressively from both slopes. After each expansion push, compression returned within a few rotations. This behavior reflects redistribution inside containment rather than full relocation into new structure. The February 5th New York boundary remains active overhead. Repeated interaction near its midzone increases structural density. Acceptance has not displaced this reference yet. Flat rotations repeat. Impulse bursts interrupt briefly. Containment remains defined by overlapping anchors and rising averages. The hourly structure is now defined more by overlap and duration than by directional extension. After the February 25th expansion, subsequent hourly candles formed repeatedly inside the corridor between the February 22nd Asia anchor and the February 5th New York range. Each return into that corridor reinforces its structural authority. Each failed attempt to sustain distance above the upper reference increases its weight. Overlap increases interaction frequency. When anchors cluster inside the same vertical space, volatility redistributes instead of escaping. Upper attempts encounter prior New York memory. Lower rotations remain supported by the rising 120 MA and the former Asia boundary. The market processes inside layered references rather than abandoning them. This is structural negotiation. The 20 MA continues to slope upward. Its gradient has moderated compared to the impulse phase. Slope remains positive, but acceleration has slowed. The 120 MA maintains steady upward slope with less volatility. It reflects longer cycle structural weight. When both averages rise together, alignment appears constructive. However, alignment alone does not equal relocation. Relocation requires distance expansion sustained over time. Distance mechanics remain central here. Candles extend briefly beyond the midzone of the February 5th range. They compress back into overlap within 1 to 3 hourly rotations. Bandwidth narrows again after each surge. Flat states repeat for multiple consecutive hours. Body size decreases. Upper wicks reappear near prior session memory. Lower wicks shorten above the February 22nd Asia anchor. Compression now dominates more frequently than expansion. When compression dominates above a rising 120 MA, structural tension accumulates gradually. Accumulation increases probability of eventual expansion. Yet accumulation is not expansion itself. It is preparation without confirmation. The February 22 Asia anchor, once resistance, now functions as structural floor. Repeated interaction above it strengthens its acceptance status. Duration above that level increases its structural credibility. At the same time, the February 5 New York boundary still caps sustained advance. Repeated interaction below its upper zone preserves its authority. Containment remains a two-sided structure. The structure remains constructive. It remains contained. It remains defined by prior session memory rather than new relocation. Volatility has not detached from its anchor references. It continues to cycle within them. The 1H chart continues processing between defined session anchors without decisive relocation. The 20 MA remains above the 120 MA after the crossover. Slope separation persists but has stabilized rather than accelerated. Distance between averages is no longer widening aggressively. This stabilization reflects balance between impulse and compression. Bollinger expansion phases appear during hourly surges. Upper band widens as body size increases. Within a few rotations, width contracts again. This expansion-contraction cycle repeats inside the same vertical corridor. Expansion is intermittent. Compression is consistent. Duration inside the February 5 New York range increases structural weight. Every hour spent inside the same overlap zone reinforces containment. Relocation requires persistence beyond this corridor for extended duration. That persistence has not yet formed. Upper probes into the February 5 boundary slow rapidly. Continuation attempts lose velocity near prior memory. Lower retracements remain shallow above the February 22 Asia reference. The rising 120 MA continues to support structural alignment beneath. Structural alignment remains constructive. Volatility remains cyclical. Containment remains active. When rising averages meet horizontal session memory, time becomes the decisive variable. If duration extends clearly above overlapping anchors, relocation gradually forms. If compression continues, volatility redistributes repeatedly within the same corridor. The hourly chart shows repeated engagement with prior session references. It shows sustained upward slope alignment between 20 MA and 120 MA. It shows volatility cycling between expansion bursts and compression blocks. It shows overlap increasing structural density rather than reducing it. The structure is not detached from its boundaries. It is negotiating within them. Price continues processing between the February 22 Asia anchor and the February 5 New York boundary above a steadily rising 120 MA.